If you don't know me, my name is Dr. Dave Boynton. I'm a chiropractor. This is my practice. This is Dr. Luke Howell. He's going to be presenting as well. So, as you all know, obviously you have an interest in depression and anxiety. It's such a significant problem in our society. And drugs don't work for people who wouldn't have depression and anxiety anymore. So there are so many other things we can do besides take medication to help support depression and anxiety. So there should be a lot of people joining us on Facebook, so that'll be good. If you want to share this with your friends, it's going to be recorded on our Facebook page as well. For now, our friends, share it, like us, share it, whatever you're supposed to do on Facebook to make people know about it. I don't do Facebook, so I don't know.
What's my job?
That's what he does, because he's younger than me. And he knows about these things. So we're going to let Dr. Luke start off talking about kind of the physical medicine approach to what we're trying to accomplish, and then we're going to go from there.
I'm Dr. Luke Howell. I do a lot of the adjusting aspect and let Dr. Boynton do the functional medicine. Learning objectives, I'm going to cover obviously the physical medicine approach. We'll talk massage, chiropractic, kind of that aspect of it. And then Dr. Boynton will cover all the other bigger words type stuff. Massage therapist here. Two aspects I'm going to cover, and kind of same thing with massage. Craniosacral is going to work really well with kind of parasympathetic, regulating, calming, anxiety type of stuff, so that can help reduce the symptoms, that neurological aspect that we'll kind of touch base on. So that craniosacral really works a lot with brain, CSF flow, that aspect. And then also more of the deep tissue myofascial stuff can really help with chronic pain, which we'll kind of cover a little bit about how that can be a lot of correlations with depression. So obviously massage therapist has kind of two things it can really help with when we talk about anxiety, depression. So, all right, so let's talk about the chronic pain aspect. So there's multiple things with chronic pain that can affect what we're looking at. So first off, has anyone sprained an ankle before? Raise their hand. Or broke their ankle in the back. So you sprain an ankle and, hey, how you doing? Come on in, we have one seat there and there. So you sprain an ankle and you're like, when is this ankle ever gonna heal? That first week you're like, I'm never gonna be able to walk again. I hate this. This is awful. And of course, most ankles heal and you move on after a couple weeks and you forget about it. But with chronic pain, they have that same aspect of healing for 3 months to a year, to way beyond that. So if you think about someone with chronic pain, they have a lot more of that aspects. I had another slide there. Okay, we don't have that. Okay. So there's another slide that's supposed to have some stats where anywhere from 50 to 85% of people with chronic pain have some level of depression. Half of them are more severe depression. Also, 65% of depressed people have chronic pain. So obviously a lot of interconnecting to that. And so what does that look like? You have chronic pain, you have neurotransmitters that are affected that are very similar to the aspects of depression. So chronic pain, same type of track, and so they kind of have a lot of overlap with that. You can have a lot of sleep issues with chronic pain. You're not able to get comfortable. You're not able to stay asleep, so then you have sleep trouble. Dr. Boynton's going to cover a little bit more later on about sleep in connection with depression, so obviously there's a lot of connection with that. A lot of hormone issues as well. Stuff has a lot of stress, a lot of chronic pain. Hormones get thrown off. A lot of correlation with depression. And then also feeling the lack of control. Kind of what the ankle analogy, talking about how you don't feel like you're able to control, you're able to do this stuff. Lack of control and have that feeling, a lot of correlation with depression. And lastly, we'll talk a lot about exercise as well. You have chronic pain, you can't really exercise. So all these kind of factors can lead to the connection between chronic pain and depression. So where does chiropractic come into that? We work a lot with chronic pain. A lot of people think chiropractic's neck pain, back pain, headaches, right? So a lot of people kind of have those correlations. We obviously do a lot more. We do knees, ankles, TMJ, ears, a lot more things beyond those, but we do a really good job of getting people moving, feeling better, and out of chronic pain. So, aspect when you're thinking depression, how chiropractic can help. If chronic pain is affected and playing a role, obviously chiropractic can help with that. Now, the other aspect, when we look more, anxiety obviously can correlate with depression as well, so kind of both as well, but we'll focus a little more on the anxiety aspect of it. There's a lot of aspects of increased sympathetic. So if you look over here, those are all kind of your sympathetic stimulators. You have shortness of breath, dilated eyes, all these different things that with anxiety you get more stressed and have more of that. So when this is overstimulated, that sympathetic, you have this cycle feeling anxious. Now with chiropractic, what we're going to be looking at is really working to downregulate the sympathetic and go more into what's called a parasympathetic state. That's for that resting, relaxation, that digestive state. So with chiropractic wise, the main thing I like to do with that is something called Logan Basic, where we want to work the sacral-2 ligament, and it's a lot of just light touch, kind of working, relaxing, similar to kind of some of your sacral-tubular things, and it can help really calm down the body. And so I use that a lot with anxiety patients, ADHD, kind of that down regulation. And again, if you look at where your parasympathetic is, it's sacrum and all the way up top. So that's kind of where we're going to work more chiropractically when we're talking more anxiety. Trying to stimulate parasympathetic is a lot down at the base of the sacrum and then a lot of the upper cervical area. So those are kind of the two things chiropractic wise. One, getting people out of pain to help that aspect of anxiety, depression. And number two, really working more of that parasympathetic. And we also have a lot of stuff in terms of how to help stimulate parasympathetic at home. You look at like, water, cold water exposure, so like turning on a cold shower. You don't have to do a whole hour cold shower at the beginning. A lot of times we start with, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and then kind of up-regulating for that to help with parasympathetic. You have gurgling, you have humming, singing, laugh therapy, a lot of kind of different stuff that as we work, kind of we can give you some home stuff to work with that as well. So, any questions before Dr. Boynton gets started?
I used to talk about the big words.
Yeah, the big words.
The big words. So what is wrong with your brain when you have depression and anxiety? I'm glad you asked, because that's what we're going to talk about. So the pathophysiology of what's going on with depression and anxiety. So what's going on in your brain when you have these things? So if you've been into my talks before, I like to talk about the physiological web. It's not a this one thing for this one sentence. Monotherapy doesn't typically work for things like this. So you have to figure out which one of these strings can I pull on to make the whole web move. This is the web.
Oh, jeez.
This is what causes mental health problems. Specifically that.
Specifically just.
One or all of those things can cause any mental health. We're talking mainly about depression, anxiety today, but you can kind of lump mental health in with this. So, of those things, what are the most important and what are the least important? All of them are the most important. Because if all of you in this room have depression, anxiety, all of you could have one of those things that yells louder than everything else. So how do we know what to do? Because we can't get an x-ray of your brain to see what the problem is. We can't take an MRI of your brain to see what the problem is. We can't do a lot of traditional medical tests to see what the problem is. So how do we figure these things out? Well, we run functional medicine tests that your doctors probably aren't running on you for some of these things. We use questionnaires. We have a very thorough history that we take. And some of it's just treating people for a long time and having clinical experience. Today is the anniversary of when I got my chiropractic license 16 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, that's kind of cool, 16 years. And I'm a grandpa. As of Saturday, my daughter had a baby. Really old.
Boy or girl?
Little boy, Forrest. 9.5 pounds.
Oh my God.
Walked out and shook my hand. It was pretty awesome. So, what are the most important things we're talking about? So, these are kind of the most important bullet points or factors on what's going to drive depression, anxiety. So, we're talking about imbalances of your neurochemistry. Those are your neurotransmitters. Glial cells. Your brain is on fire. So your glial cells are your brain cells. Poor sleep resiliency, nutritional deficiencies, hormone imbalances, trauma, physical, mental, emotional, blood sugar imbalances, Nathan, GI microbiome, and sleep. So those are the most important factors that for most people that have depression, anxiety. So we're going to kind of dive into all those. So when your brain that has an adequate amount of brain chemistry, the different lobes of your brain cannot communicate properly. There is no direct way to measure these things. because you would have to do a spinal tap. And a spinal tap would not even show you what's in different regions of your brain, because different parts of your brain need more serotonin, more dopamine, more acetylcholine, more epinephrine, norepinephrine at different times of the day and throughout the day. So you really can't measure this. So thinking, I'm going to give you an SSRI to make you feel happy is still a theory. That's not medically proven that SSRIs do impact the serotonin uptake inhibitors. So between the neurosynapses, it keeps it there. Most people in the functional medicine community believe that why SSRIs do work, and they do work. And I'm glad we have them, because we'd be a whole lot worse off if we didn't. But they believe it's because it's actually anti-inflammatory to your brain, more so than it actually keeps the serotonin in between the neurosynapses. So the limbic system is kind of your animal part of your brain. It's in the back. It's me, I want this now. It's your ADHD brain. So that brain can also be hurt very easily, emotionally and physically, because it's kind of your child brain. So sometimes we get stuck in that child part of our brain and everything is horrible. And then we have fear. And then we put up strongholds in our mind. And then we believe all these things that aren't really true. Because the frontal part of your brain is trying to turn off the back part of your brain. The front part of your brain is your frontal lobe. That's where your executive functioning is. That's your understanding of math and science and art and all the things you do to be successful human beings. So if you don't have proper brain chemistry, the front can't calm down the back. So that's one part. Histamine is an excitatory neurotransmitter. So that means if you have depression or anxiety or mental health issues more seasonally, if you take an antihistamine, it'll help out your mental health quite a bit. So we're coming up on it now. Maybe some of you have had some itchy eyes or some scratchy throats. As it gets closer to rugby season, a lot of the autistic children we treat have worse behavior. We see mental health rise. There's an increase of suicide in the fall and in the spring when all the stuff starts blooming, and that's why that happens. So if that sounds like you or your children, that you have worse symptoms seasonally, it may have to do with your environment or food. Food also produces a histamine response. So there are foods that are higher in histamine, there are foods that are lower in histamine. So if you feel like food is a big driver of your mental health, histamine could be a big part of it. Hypoglycemia, that's low blood sugar. Your brain needs sugar to function, and when it is low, your brain will freak out. It will wake you up and not let you go back to sleep. It will cause you to have anxiety for no reason at all, and depression for no reason at all. And you have to have hormones to make neurotransmitters. So if you're postmenopausal for women, if you're older for gentlemen, or you just have goofy hormones, your body can't make neurotransmitters. So those are some things we can look at from an imbalance standpoint. So I try to find some research that kind of talks about all these different things here. So this is a research study that shows common factors, the three most common factors that impact depression, anxiety is diet, exercise, and sleep. So research on major depression has confirmed that the cause by an array of biopsychosocial, that's a long word, and lifestyle factors, diet, exercise, and sleep are three such impacts that play a significant mediating role in development and the progression of three major lifestyle factors of major depressive disorder. Associated with depression is neurotransmitter processes. Your brain can't make neurotransmitters. Your brain's inflamed. You're stressed up all the time. You don't have enough antioxidants. You don't tolerate stress well. Your brain is aging prematurely, and your mitochondria don't work, so you're tired, is what that tells us. Glial cell inflammation, your brain, that's a cool picture, your brain's on fire. What causes your brain to be on fire? I'm glad you asked that question. Inflammatory diets. Who can tell me what are the top three most inflammatory foods?
Sugar.
And gluten and dairy. Good job. Most of my patients, good job. I've hammered that in your brain enough. Those are inflammatory to every human being, especially in the United States, because our gluten is so modified. It's not so that it's GMO, it's hybridized. So the yield of gluten in the grain that we eat is so much higher than what it used to be even 100 years ago. So our wheat has about 85% gluten in it. European wheat has 5% gluten in it. So it's assaulting our brains with inflammation. Even if you don't have symptoms, GI tract symptoms of when you eat sugar, gluten, and dairy, it's still hurting your brain. It's still creating inflammation. It still can impact your mental health conditions. Head trauma. I've had patients that have had head trauma as a kid and shortly thereafter they developed depression, anxiety, and it never got better. Car accidents. Things that you would not consider to be even trauma can be some triggers of brain inflammation. So if you have a minor head trauma and you eat gluten and dairy every single day, that minor head trauma turns more significant. Mold causes inflammation in your brain too. It almost mimics head trauma. And that's what I have a research paper about next. So lots of things can impact your brain. Developmental disorders, that's something they're going to be born with. Stroke. So stroke is a significant big hammer to your brain. There's autoimmunity that can impact. So autoimmunity is when your body attacks itself. So there's autoimmunity that can attack pretty much everything in your body. And there are certain ones like multiple sclerosis that can impact your brain. But when you have an autoimmune condition, your body's more sensitive to inflammation in general. Neurodegeneration as you age. Most people, especially in the United States, have eaten an inflammatory diet their whole life because that's what most of our food that we eat. We all like gluten, dairy, and sugar. Why? Because it tastes good. And it is good. It's just bad for you. And it's especially bad for your brain. Physiological, hypoglycemic, again, is low blood sugar and poor sleep. Based upon specific therapeutic targeted and mechanism, we analyze the pathophysiology of monoamine, so one neurotransmitter, hypothalamic pituitary, that's your HP axis and stress response, for antidepressants and botanicals. In addition to gut flora, which is your GI tract, obviously. Basically, this says that when you have any trauma to your brain, it's going to impact your gut flora as well as your body's ability to make new brain cells. You make 1,400 new brain cells a day. That's super cool. I didn't know that. I just learned that recently. I thought that was pretty awesome. God made a pretty cool brain. Poor stress resiliency. Why can some people live up here and tolerate stress and be a CEO and they're perfectly fine, and some people can't go outside, some people can't drive in traffic, some people can't eat food? It's all based on their stress resiliency. Sometimes it's genetic, sometimes it's learned, sometimes it's you were a stressed out little kid and you've literally drained all of your adrenaline function from a little kid, and as an adult you have no backup system, you have no resiliency. So what are things that can impact your stress resiliency? Stress resiliency is how you can just tolerate your world that you live in. So when you don't sleep or you have weird sleep patterns, when is the most beneficial time to sleep, to be asleep at night?
4 to 10.
10 to 2 is the most restorative sleep for your body, specifically your brain. So if you're not getting to bed till 11, 12 o'clock, you're missing the sweet spot. You need to be asleep by 10, especially if you have depression, anxiety. Your brain needs to recover. So people who have night shift jobs have a lot of mental health. They can have a lot of mental health disorders because their brain doesn't have time to recover. And then fluctuating, you want to try to go to bed around the same time, you want to try to wake up around the same time. Intestinal permeability, so leaky gut. Most of you probably heard about that. There's a huge neurological connection to the GI tract and to the brain. So basically when your gut's pissed off, your brain's pissed off. And when your brain's pissed off, your gut's pissed off. So there's a marker we can measure called LPS, lipopolysaccharides. It's a very inflammatory gut marker, and when we see that in systemic inflammation, it will actually erode the blood-brain barrier. It can cause psychosis, and we've seen that before, schizophrenia. So how do we fix it? We fix people's guts and their schizophrenia goes away. That's pretty cool. It's not, that's with food and with supplements. That's not 10 psych meds. It's fix their gut and their brain gets better. They don't need extra lithium. So eating an inflammatory diet reduces your stress because food can be stressful. Gluten, dairy, sugar are stressful on your bodies. even if you don't have symptoms. Then we can run additional tests for food sensitivities and other food allergies to see if there are additional foods that you may or may not be aware of that are also impacting your brain and your health. Lack of antioxidants. So antioxidants are pretty cool. So most people know, kind of eat the rainbow, right? Not Skittles, but food. So you want to eat all the fruits and vegetables you can, the blueberries, your strawberries, your berries, leafy green vegetables, those are antioxidants. Antioxidants help reduce free radical damage. Free radical damage causes oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is what causes us to age prematurely. I'm actually 65 years old, don't I look good?
Oh, yeah.
See? I have lots of antioxidants. So antioxidants will really help because antioxidants are electron donors. If you guys remember back from high school biology class, you got your carbon molecule and 4 little things sticking out. So when you have free radical damage, inflammation erases that top electron. Now that cell is damaged. It causes inflammation. Your antioxidants, your blueberry comes along, says, here's a hydrogen molecule, you're now whole again, you're now healed. So that's what antioxidants do, is they are electron donors. That's why you need to get lots of them. What causes free radical damage? Being alive. Everything. This floor is outgassing formaldehyde, sorry. Your clothes probably have fire retardant on it, sorry. You ate GMO food today, sorry. You drove in your cars, so the seat cushions outgas chemicals. You breathed exhaust coming here. Everything causes it. So you have to, because you can't control everything, you need to control what you put in your body. Antioxidants are very important for your brain to function properly and for your body to have proper stress resiliency. Lack of exercise. You have to move your bodies. And when you have really bad depression, anxiety, the last thing you want to do is exercise. And I get that because you have no motivation. And when you have no motivation, you're low in dopamine. You're low in dopamine, the front of your brain can't calm down the back of your brain. But could you stretch maybe? Stretching actually helps reduce symptoms of depression, anxiety. I can't go to the gym and work out. Don't do that. That would be horrible for you to do. Can you touch your toes for 30 seconds? Can you do some things like this every couple hours? You can do those little things because that's good for your brain. It's good for your body to tolerate stress better. Poor circulation can impact your stress. Hypoglycemia, toxic burdens, those are all, we talked about toxic burden just a second ago. Autoimmunity, dysglycemia, and cortisol imbalances. Cortisol is inflammatory hormones that our adrenal glands release when we're under stress. When people are in that sympathetic stress, their cortisol is really high. When your cortisol is really high, your testosterone is really low. You need testosterone to make brain chemistry. Your body thinks you're starving, so then you gain weight eating almost nothing. That's why when you take steroids, you gain weight, because it messes up your cortisol rhythm. People subjected to sleep disturbances and depression and distressing are often unresolved by treatment. This indicates significant alteration in brain neurotransmitter function. Your brain doesn't work right when you don't sleep. Nutritional deficiencies. So we know from research that these vitamins specifically, when you're deficient in that, can cause mental health problems. Not do, can. Now, if you have genetic predispositions to having depression, anxiety, and you're deficient in these things, that's got a double whammy. If you lived in a home with parents with mental health problems, if that runs in your family, and then you have these problems, and then you have these deficiencies, triple whammy. So just making sure you have adequate levels of B vitamins, tryptophan, 5-HTP. These are just common things you can buy from most stores. Most of them are garbage supplements. That's why you should get them from my office, because I know exactly what's in all of them, because we get the assay from the company that this is actually what's in this vitamin. So, and then just in general, omega-3s, protein, because you need the amino acids. Women need iron, especially women who are menstruating. So anemia can cause lack of blood flow to the brain, which means you don't have oxygen to the brain, which means your brain's inflamed. And then lots of antioxidants. I'm not going to really study to you because you guys can read. At least most of you can anyways, because you made it here. So B vitamins if you're deficient in B vitamins, you can have anxiety, specifically folic acid and B12. And if you have something called MTHFR, which is methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase, it's an enzyme that your body can't convert B12 and folic acid to the usable form. This means you can't make neurotransmitters. So we just give people methyl B vitamins anyways. Now if they have the mutation, we're supplying it, and if they don't, you may know that vitamin D is significantly helpful for people who have depression. Probably one of the top nutrients for depression. That is why people who live in the South in the United States have less depression, because they have more vitamin D3 levels. Interesting, and that's a very inexpensive supplement to take that can really make profound benefits with people. Hormone imbalances. So, when you don't have hormones, you can't make neurotransmitters. So, improper hormone fluctuations throughout the month. Hormone deficiencies can impact it. Your thyroid is a huge factor with mental health disorders, autoimmunity, hypoglycemia, nutritional deficiencies. I think we pretty much covered all these things. You can see a common theme. A lot of these same things come up with a lot of these conditions. Females, low estrogen, low progesterone, low testosterone. That's what you can't make on your right if you don't have those hormones. So we can run blood tests that are very simple to run through LabCorp to see, can you make hormones? Because if you can't make hormones, you can't make brain chemistry. Trauma, all kinds of trauma. And all kinds of trauma impacts everybody differently based on so many different factors that we can't go into today. But trauma, physical, mental, emotional, chemical, all kinds of things can impact that. So when you have trauma, you have your odds of having depression, anxiety are higher. Even just hitting your head, being around chemicals. Here's a fun fact for you. I bought a particle meter for my house. Why would I do that? Because my grandson is going to be crawling around the carpet. So I want to see how many particles my carpet is outgassing and make sure it's safe for him to crawl on the carpet. It doesn't impact me and you because we're up here. But if you're a baby and your face is this far from the ground all the time, it's a big deal. And my house outgassed like 0.25, which is way below the acceptable level, which was awesome, made me happy. Because if it didn't, I would tear out my carpet and put in hardwood floors. It's that big a deal. Because his brain is close to perfect right now. And it's just going to stay the same or get worse as he gets older. From 0 to 5, your brain is still growing. You're still making neural pathways. Your brain's still doing all kinds of cool things. After that, it slows down quite a bit. And then at 20, what you got's what you got. It's just almost downhill from there. So it's really important that we keep these little kids' brains super healthy so that they can become healthy, productive members of society and change the world. So trauma increases risk of suicide. Trauma is associated with poor response to antidepressant and anti-anxiety medication. So if you're in trauma, sometimes medication doesn't work. And depending on the trauma in the person, it makes all these things make a difference. People put up mental walls that do not allow the trauma to happen again. If you were sexually abused, you're going to try your best to never be in that same scenario so that can't happen to you again. And that's what you should do. But sometimes that you put those walls up so well, nothing gets through. Even good stuff doesn't get through. So counseling can really help out with that quite a bit. If your cortisol is always high, you're always in fight or flight, you're running away from a bear 24/7, that's exhausting. So a lot of people who have depression, who have mental health issues, have fatigue as well. Fear of future trauma. Fear is a big problem, especially when you have trauma, because you're afraid. So you're avoiding of so many things, situations, things like that. But the problem is that when you're stuck, you don't want to do things. But if you live in your comfort zone, you cannot grow in your comfort zone. You have to do things that you're uncomfortable with if you want to get well. And that could be different for different people. Some people, they're afraid to leave their home. Going outside their yard is a big deal for them. Some people, running a marathon is their fear. I don't know what it is. So there's a huge variety of things, but you have to learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And sometimes maybe it's for a second, and then it's 10 seconds, and it's a minute, and then it's a minute, then it's an hour, then it's a day. But you have to move forward in some way, or you're always going to be stuck. Because supplements, medication can't fix some of these things, some of these walls that we put up. The Bible calls them strongholds. We're going to talk about that tonight too. Because you're just stuck in that sympathetic, that loop, that negative feedback loop. So mold exposure is similar to mild traumatic brain injury. And they got mold in their house. Anybody depressed? You can't just spray bleach on mold either. It just bleaches the mold, and then it grows back. You actually have to have it mitigated. One of the best things to do is hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide kills mold. So that's pretty inexpensive, and that'll actually kill it, not just discolor it, but actually kill it. Blood sugar instability. How many people get hangry? A couple people get hangry, and if you suffer from depression, anxiety, that is your blood sugar roller coaster. So you're inflamed, your brain's inflamed here, and your brain's inflamed there. So if that happens 6 or 7 times throughout the day, every single day, and then you eat, like most people, gluten, dairy, and sugar every single day, and you're like most people, you're on chemicals, your brain has no chance to be well. Keeping your blood sugar stable is so crucial. Your mental health condition will not heal if your blood sugar is all over the place. It physically cannot. Now, can you take drugs? Sure. They're not going to work very well because your brain doesn't have the chemistry it needs to even make neurotransmitters. You have to keep blood sugar stable. And we're talking later about how to do that. So these insulin surges produce inflammation. Blood-brain barrier. So we have three permeable membranes of our body. Our GI tract. Good stuff's supposed to get through, like nutrients. But when we have a leaky gut, bad things get through and create inflammation. Our lung barrier. Oxygen's supposed to get through, but sometimes things don't. Or things get through that should not get through. And then our blood-brain barrier, same thing. Stuff gets in our brain that shouldn't get in our brain that causes inflammation. So it's cool if we can kind of measure all those things too with some functional medicine testing. When your blood sugar is on a roller coaster, your body can't make ATP. ATP is energy. So keeping your blood sugar stable will keep you tired if it's abnormal. It has a negative impact on your circadian rhythm. That's your sleep-wake cycle. So how many people cannot sleep through the night? Okay? And of those people, how many people have blood sugar roller coasters? Most of you. Eat a snack right before you go to bed. Nocturnal hypoglycemia. So if you get hangry 4 hours after a meal, you go to bed at 10 o'clock, you're going to wake up 2 because your brain needs sugar. So if you eat something right before bed, a snack that has fat, fiber, and protein. Which one? I don't care. Whatever you want. Not a lot, but eat something. Beef jerky strip. A hard-boiled egg. Nuts and seeds. Piece of hamburger. Whatever. Eat something. And you sleep through the night, it's because your blood sugar dropped in the middle of the night.
No carbs at all?
No, because that causes your blood sugar to go up, and the higher it goes up, the more it goes down.
Oh, gotcha.
Something that has fat, fiber, and protein is ideal. Now, some people can have carbs and they're fine. But if you already tend to have hypoglycemia, you want to stick with fat, fiber, and protein, because that's going to help to flatten the curve of your blood sugar. Carbs go up, carbs go down. Fat, fiber, protein keeps it more like this. So now your brain's on fire because you have no sugar, and now you're not sleeping because now you're stressed out. Now your stress resiliency goes down. Now you eat gluten, dairy, and sugar. Do you guys see the theme? That's why so many people have depression, anxiety, because they have all these little underlying things that they just don't know they need to fix because their doctors don't know physiology. They just know what drugs equal what symptom, because their training is flawed, in my opinion. Overproduction of adrenal gland hormones, so that's cortisol. You're tired, your hair thins, insomnia. These are all signs of low blood sugar. So how do you know if you're hypoglycemic? Look at the chart. This is normal. You wake up with energy and you're hungry. You don't crave blood sugar. You don't crave things. You don't get hangry. That's how we should try to be. And if you're not, you can improve this. This is not something that you have to be this way forever. So after you eat food, you should feel full. You shouldn't feel tired. You shouldn't feel energized. If you feel energized before you eat, your blood sugar was low prior to your meal, or you're deficient in nutrients. If you feel tired after you eat, you surpass your body's ability to produce insulin, so you would go into carb coma. So
Can you
those are
repeat that
signs.
again?
What's that?
The entire thing of before meal, after meal. Can you repeat that again? You're saying before
yes.
meal, how you feel?
So you should, after you eat, you should feel full.
Okay.
So if you feel energized after you eat, you came into that meal with low blood sugar,
Okay.
or you're deficient in nutrients. Or if you're tired, you ate too many carbs, or not enough fat, or both. So where do you fall? You should not have energy. You shouldn't crash. You shouldn't need to drink caffeine in the afternoon just to function. Caffeine's fine. Coffee's fine. Actually, a strong antioxidant. Just get mold-free coffee. Fun fact, there's lots of mold in coffee. You shouldn't need sugar. The GI tract. So dysbiosis of the microbiome. So this illustration right here I think is pretty cool. So you have your immune cells. When there is a pathogen that gets through that gut lining, your body sends out cytokines, which are inflammatory mediators. Those mediators talk to the gut microbiome. They're your little creepy crawlies in your gut. And then you get your cells that go through the gut lining, which cause the vagus nerve to fire, which then inflames your brain. These are all the things that cause gut inflammation, that cause brain inflammation. You can't absorb nutrients. Serotonin is stored in the lining of your GI tract, but used in your brain. So that's why I say if your gut's not happy, your brain's not happy, because your serotonin is not getting where it's supposed to. Gut inflammation equals brain inflammation. Low blood sugar weakens the lining. Your gut lining is only one cell thick, so it's just not too challenging to poke little holes in that thing. The release of LPS, we talked about that. The gut-brain axis. Your body detoxifies quite a bit through the GI tract, and it alters your circadian rhythm with your sleep-wake cycle. Your gut does that. Gut microbiota and mental health disorders, especially, will cause people to have general anxiety disorder. Fixing your gut is crucial to fixing your brain. Fixing your brain is crucial to fixing your gut. Bidirectional nerves, not just from here to here, they go this way. Sleep, nocturnal hypoglycemia, we talked about that. Waking up in the middle of the night, can't go back to sleep. Hypoxia, so what does that mean? Lack of oxygen. So what does that cause? Your brain doesn't get oxygen when you snore. So sleep apnea is a significant problem if you tend to have problems with mental health, depression, anxiety. And if you snore a lot, you might want to get checked to make sure you have CPAP to get a CPAP machine to see if you have sleep apnea. It can be a game changer for some people. If you have problems falling asleep or staying asleep, it can cause depression, anxiety. So what do you want to do? You want to reduce stimulation before you go to bed. Get off your tablets, devices. TV is not that bad, but ideally don't watch TV because your body produces dopamine, which is an excitatory neurotransmitter, so it keeps you awake when you sleep. And you sleep as consistent as you can. And you sleep, you try to go to bed around the same time, wake up around the same time. It's what your body likes, because when it doesn't get that, that can impact mental health as well. When you don't sleep, you don't recover, you don't heal. A simple way to put this, in kind of my mind, your body's like, okay, what did you do to me today? And then it says, what did you give me to recover and repair from what you did to me today? And which one is greater? If I broke myself down more than I built myself back up, I'm in deficit. Now, sometimes it's weeks, sometimes it's years, sometimes it's decades of deficit. Now you have chronic disease, now it's really hard to fix you. So it needs to be more good in than bad came in, and now I can fix stuff that I broke last week that my body didn't have a resource for. Well, if you don't sleep, you can't do that. Sleep is crucial. Sleep is important. And your body detoxifies the most at nighttime. So sleeping is important for detoxification.
What could be the possible reasons for frequent urination at night?
Brain inflammation.
Okay.
The nucleus in your brain that I can't remember right now can become inflamed. Or it could be chiropractic as well. The L3 nerve controls your bladder. So we see this commonly with little kids who wet the bed still. We'll use my son, for example. I like to throw him under the bus. He doesn't mind. He wet the bed too. He was a little bit older. I adjusted him, as you can imagine, a million times. Nothing. Found out he had a food sensitivity to citric acid. Pulled citric acid out of his diet, didn't wet the bed ever since. Citric acid is irritating to the bladder, and that created inflammation in the nucleus in his brain. 12-year-old gymnast wet the bed. Adjusted her once, never wet the bed again. I don't know what it is. So, or the sacral plexus. The pudendal nerves control the bladder as well. And as you get older, stuff shifts and moves and, sorry. Have babies, sorry. Sometimes not a whole lot you can do, but if your inflammation is less, it may help you with, I know sometimes women have to get up to go to the bathroom frequently at night too. If your inflammation is less, you'll most likely wake up less frequently to have to go to the bathroom. Sleep disturbances, depression, altered neurotransmitter function. So some genetic conditions. So everything we've talked about, if you have these 4 genetic conditions that we can measure through blood work, all these things are a bigger deal for you. So MTHFR, talked about that, can't make neurotransmitters. MTRR, can't make neurotransmitters or detox well. MAOA, we call it the weird gene. You can't get out excitatory neurotransmitters out of your brain, so you're going to be constantly anxious. You fix that with riboflavin, B2. And MRK3, you can't detoxify out excitatory neurotransmitters, you don't detox well, and you can't make neurotransmitters well. And you can have all those at the same time. Those are people that have family history of depression, anxiety, everybody on both sides kind of thing. So it's learned, it's genetic, but there's hope. And we'll talk about that. Genetic disorders, there are some genetic disorders that impact the limbic system. Remember, back of the brain yells louder than the front of the brain can turn it off. So there's genetic conditions for that too. Genetics, so when you have genetic susceptibility, you don't detox properly. So your body downregulates cytochrome P450, which is kind of fun to say. That's phase 2 liver detox. That's how we get the majority of the junk out of our bodies. So sometimes you can have a genetic, so you don't do that well. So if you have the genetics to detoxify poorly and you're on pesticides, it's gonna hammer your brain. And if you don't have that problem, the pesticides are fine. The ENF is fine. The other things are fine. But if you have these predispositions, it's kind of a double whammy.
So those people tend to be more sensitive to chemicals and notice it?
You're more sensitive to chemicals, yep. You have multiple
Smells and chemicals.
Multiple chemical sensitivity,
Gotcha.
yes. Yeah, when you're sensitive to smells, like you walk by the candle store at the mall and you get a headache.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't detox well, typically. Or you're just super saturated with chemicals, and those 2 drops overflowed your bucket even more.
Oh, okay.
So, 2 different approaches. The allopathic or traditional medical approach, and then functional medicine, what we do here in our practice. So, there's no labs for it, because there's really not. So, why run labs? Questionnaires are helpful. We use questionnaires too, they're sometimes helpful. Medication, and we'll see what works. And if it doesn't work, we'll give you more medication, and then we'll use a different medication, and then we'll try more addicting medications, and we'll make a medication that makes you worse, and you finally get the right one after like 6 months of feeling horrible and going all over the place, and they probably will send you to counseling. That's the medical model. It's very scientific, as you can see. We'll see if this one works for you. Cross our fingers. Don't kill yourself in the meantime. Seriously, that happens a lot when people are trying medications.
Yeah, I imagine that.
Because it makes depression, anxiety worse. What's the crazy part? The medication that's trying to solve the problem oftentimes makes the problem worse. So what do? There are some labs we can run. Certainly there are lifestyle modifications that we can make. Supplements will heal your body because God designed our bodies to heal. And nutrients help do that better than anything else. Counseling is definitely helpful as well, and I'll talk about a counseling place that I like here in town that you guys can go see. So it's very different. This is kind of doctor directed. This is kind of we help you heal directed. We take away the obstacles, give your body the resources you need to heal, and your body will do what it's supposed to do. It'll heal. And then when you go to counseling, it works so much better because you're not trying to overcome all these other obstacles that we've addressed. You can actually truly just work on yourself instead of trying to work on your sleep and your food and your diet and your all these other things. We help you to overcome those things. So counseling works so much better when we address the physiological stuff first. Brain health assessment. So we have brain health assessments. I print off a bunch of copies if you want to take these home. So if you come as a patient, I'm going to ask you to fill this out anyways. So if you want to grab this, this kind of gives an idea if you have problems with blood sugar stability, stress resiliency, or if you have some neurotransmitter imbalances, omega-3 deficiencies, how much stress affects your brain, how much your gut affects your brain. That little question tells us all those things. So in a minute, I can make some recommendations for people that have issues. And if you're not getting adequate blood flow to your brain too. So pretty cool questionnaire. So this is our approach, diet, nutrition, lifestyle. You have to address hypoglycemia. You have to address blood sugar. I'm going to talk more about how to do that specifically later. Stress resiliency. What can you do every single day to reduce stress? What do you like to do? Do that. That might mean you actually have to wake up earlier, which sucks, but do you want to wake up a little bit earlier or do you want to be depressed and anxious? I'd probably want to wake up earlier. Then it becomes easier and easier and easier to get out of bed when you feel better. And reducing inflammatory foods in your diet. So kind of eat a paleo diet. Most of you probably heard of paleo, kind of fruits, vegetables, and meat. Or incorporating more of a ketogenic diet, so adding in healthy fats. Your brain's made of fat, and it's important for your brain to function properly if you get enough fat in. There's genetic factors that we can address. Exercise programs are important. Really controlling your sleep. Neurotransmitter support with nutraceuticals. Identifying and fixing nutritional deficiencies. Fixing your gut. Weighted blankets, and reducing screen time. So these are all things you need to do. Maybe it's just one, or maybe it's all of them. I don't know. That's what we try to figure out. So this is an interesting study they did in the UK. So lifestyle factors associated with depressed mood, they found that increased screen time impacted people's moods tremendously and caused poor sleep and dietary patterns. Get off your technology. Use technology for good, not for evil. Technology is good, but if it's consuming you, it's bad. Especially for these adolescent kids now that grew up on technology, they don't know how to communicate with people. And I see that in my kids a little bit too. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? You know, they'll text their friend over there instead of walking over and talking to them. Like, open your mouth and move. Move your mouth, talk to people. Diet, nutrition, exercise, major depression, major depressive disorders. These are things that it affects. What nutraceuticals can you take? What is the magic pill, Dr. Boynton?
Yep, all of them.
All of them or none of them? If you're hypoglycemic, none of those work. If you don't sleep, none of those work. If you don't move, none of those work. There's not a monotherapy approach. Like traditional medicine things. Now, is it helpful? Absolutely. For some people, it's saved people's lives. It's also caused people to kill themselves. Because the side effects of all those medications is suicide, which is scary. Take some vitamins. Go for a walk. Get some sun on your face. So these are things these are common things we recommend. I have a couple recommendations as well at the end of what specific supplements these are in. So these are all factors that can impact your mood. So pesticides, heavy metals, endocrine disruptors, air pollution, respiratory mycotoxins, that's mold, EMFs, those weird people wearing those little medallions for EMFs. You know, for some people, EMFs crushes their brain. My wife. So Wi-Fi routers, 5G towers. 5G towers have caused lots of people to commit suicide when they're put up by their homes.
Wow.
I'm not going to get this right. I'm not going to say it because I'm not going to get it right. But they put 5G towers up in schools in New York, and bad things happen to the students and the teachers.
Oh, wow.
I can't tell the details, so I'm not going to try to quote anything. But then they took them down and everything went back to normal again. So some people are super sensitive to EMFs, especially if you have heavy metal toxicity. So EMFs causes scattered radiation and vibration to go through your body. If you have heavy metal in your body, so think about it this way. If you take a jello mold and put a piece of metal into it, and you put it up to a speaker, the speaker is going to cause vibration. The jello doesn't move, but the metal inside the jello moves. So now if you have heavy metal inside your body, and EMF hits your body doesn't move. The metal inside your body moves. Where's a lot of heavy metal at? In your body fat. What's your brain made of? Fat. Makes your brain hurt.
Wow.
And when your brain hurts because of this invisible thing that doesn't affect anybody else but you, now you think you're crazy. EMF hurts way more people than we think. So what should we do? We should get 6G towers. That's the answer.
That'll do it.
That's going to be the thing. So we can get faster internet, so we can play our video games faster and watch movies without load faster. Really? Horrible. Talked about all the rest of those things. Depression and suicide, multiple risk factors, pesticide exposure. So this is actually pretty interesting. It said that people that were exposed to pesticides had an increased risk of depression and suicide, even in low doses. So if you grew up by a farm in the countryside and they crop nested, or they sprayed, even when they spray crops now, the wind causes the pesticides to blow 5 miles. And if you grew up there, a one-time exposure, you're probably fine, unless you already have some brain trauma from like a head injury or something like that too. But if you grew up there, you're just slowly getting poisoned, which really impacts your brain chemistry tremendously. And then all the rest of the things. EMF, research on EMF, 115 power plant workers and 124 administrative personnel. If you're around a lot of EMF, oftentimes you have mental health disorders. Line workers, people who work on the power lines, depression, anxiety. There's a lot of suicide for those guys too, because around EMF right by their heads for a long time. So don't put your routers in your bedrooms or your kids' bedrooms. Put your routers as far away from your living space as you can. Your power box on the outside of your house. Don't have somebody's bed up next to it at night. You want to have that kind of on the opposite side of the house, because if you're sensitive to EMF, it's really going to impact your health. It's impacting your health negatively anyways. But if you have a lot of stress resiliency, you're fine. But if your stress resiliency is poor, those things are a big deal. So what are the 3 pillars? What are the 3 most important things you can do?
Would I also be to avoid like watches and all that stuff?
For those sensitive people,
yeah.
absolutely. I've had patients, my wrist hurts, I'm like, stop wearing your smartwatch and see if it goes away.
Yeah.
It does, you're like, wow, I'm a genius. I'm like, so I get paid the big bucks. I'm like, you're just sensitive to it. It's not fair. Let's get you healthy. Let's improve your stress resiliency, and maybe you can wear them. Because it shouldn't bother you, but it does. That's why no one reads disclaimers, including myself. I mean, on the iPhone it says it can cause brain cancer. We don't care, right? Gotta have my Candy Crush and my Facebook and my Instagram and all the other junk the kids are watching that's messing up their brains. Facebook blue is the most addicting color. That particular shade of blue gets the biggest dopamine hits. That Zuckerberg did research on that. He's an evil genius. It's same blue as that. Gotcha. These marketers know how to manipulate our children to make them hooked on things, which drives depression, anxiety. When they can't get that dopamine hit, they're feeling like they're missing out on something, and then they turn to other addictive things too when that happens. So exercise, we all have a certain exercise tolerance. Some of us can maybe run a triathlon, some of us can't walk up and down the stairs. It's not good or bad, but you need to exercise as hard as you can, as long as you can, without feeling exhausted afterwards or in too much pain the next day. So we all have different thresholds, but the goal is to expand our thresholds every single day. Because if you live in your comfort zone, you're never going to grow. This comes with exercise. So if it's walking down the mailbox once, try to do it twice a day. If it's running 1 mile, run 1.5 miles. If you can't run, stretch. Restorative chair yoga calms your brain down. So you have to be able to exercise. And these are just some examples of what is light, what is moderate, and what is high exercise. Exercise done 3 times a week, moderately increasing over a minimum of 9 weeks, is an amazing treatment for depression. What exercise? Whatever one you want to do. You want to do CrossFit? Do CrossFit. You want ballroom dance? Ballroom dance. You want to walk? Walk. Do something to move your body, to increase blood flow and oxygen to your brain to reduce inflammation. Now, they didn't change your diet. They didn't fix leaky gut. These guys are eating gluten, dairy, sugar. They're on EMFs. They're breathing in formaldehyde. They just moved. And it made their brain happier. You can look up this and see what type of exercise. Just exercise. Move your body. This was interesting. The other one talked about exercise 3 times a week for 9 weeks. This talks about single bouts of exercise. So exercising once a week for 40, 60 minutes at moderate intensity had a positive emotional impact. And if it did twice a week, it got better. What if you did it every single day? You might be happy. It's crazy, I know, but people exercise every day. And I bet they're happy. More exercise. In older people, it really helps out with cognitive decline because you're getting blood flow to your brain, reducing inflammation. Old people don't move. That's why they get constipated because they're taking a bunch of medications that cause constipation. Another reason is because they don't drink water because the nucleus in their brain that causes thirst degenerates and they literally don't get thirsty and don't get hungry. But if they move, those things don't happen. HIIT training is the best high intensity interval training for anxiety. I didn't include this. I've read lots of studies to make these slides for you guys, but there was one study, and I'm not going to get it right, but it was something like they found kids that had anxiety. If they jumped up and down for 2 minutes, their anxiety went from like an 8 to a 2. So if you're having an anxiety attack, run in place. Do jumping jacks, do burpees, do something with intensity for a short period of time, and your anxiety attack, if not goes away, it will get so much better just from a short burst of exercise.
Is that like the same as running?
Yeah, the whole runner's high.
Yeah.
Because when you do short bursts of intense exercise, you burn up all the excess catecholamines in your brain. That's what you use first for exercise. You use excess brain chemistry first. I'm stressed out, I'm stressed. Why am I stressed out? I don't remember because I just exercise. You just really forget why you were stressed out.
Is it different than like strength training? Like strength training is not head.
It could be.
Like lifting weights?
You could make strength training hit exercises.
Okay.
Does it have to do with what your heart rate gets up to? To
To a
be
certain
considered
degree.
hit?
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, so if you were doing biceps, you would just do this as fast as you can for a minute or two, and then you would drop and you would do bodyweight squats, and you would go and do bench press. So it's just doing quick movements really quickly. Sleep. How do you know if you get enough sleep? If you should not be tired in the morning. You should not have to use an alarm to wake up. If you exercise, you will not have to do those things. So what causes sleep disturbances? Loud snoring, not breathing. If you have headaches in the morning and dry mouth, you are not getting enough oxygen. Impaired, so if you have low cortisol, it's hard to get up. Traumatic brain injuries, fatigue. So, nocturia, that's having urinary issues at night. Insomnia. So lots of things. Blood sugar stability can impact mood quite a bit. So if you're never hypoglycemic, how long can you go between meals and feel normal? Figure that out. It's crucial. Let's say it's 4 hours and you get hangry. That means your blood sugar was low at 3 hours. That means you eat fat, fiber, protein every 3 hours. And then that blood sugar roller coaster turns into this. And now your brain's happy. Is it 5 hours? Is it 6 hours? I don't know. But that's what you have to do to help fix your brain. So these are some things. This is basically the list of what we run you through when you become a patient of ours. We look at all of these things. Not see if this medication works. We do that. Not all of that on every single patient, but that's like my checkbox of this is everything I'm going to cover to make sure I don't miss something that could impact your ability to get well. If this medication doesn't work, we'll give you another one. Good luck in between. What can you do tomorrow? You can make a plan to get well. You can stabilize your blood sugar. You can sleep well. You can exercise to tolerance or stretch. You can eat a paleo diet. You can consider taking supplements. You can consider going to counseling. The newest version of this is not on there so I like the Anxiety Center in Montgomery. They do a really good job. And if you're looking for Christian counselors there, Dr. Nathan Fite, F-I-T-E, and Jeremy Nelson are who I recommend. They all do a good job, but if you're looking at it from a Christian perspective, they are Christians and they will pray for you and things like that, which is really important. And what can you do tomorrow? You can pray. Jesus has all the answers for everything wrong with you. And mental health is an attack from the evil one. Especially on our children. These supplements are 15% off. These supplements help your brain for the month of September. Oh, cooler here. I made so many last minute changes. I don't know what's going to be on the next slide. Because I'm like, I put a slide there. Is it going to show up? I don't know. NeuroCalm, great for the scalp and body make GABA. GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. It calms you down. You can take this throughout the day. You can take it all day long. Some people take this just for sleep, but this is a really good product. Serotonin helps your body make serotonin. If you feel kind of depressed, have sleeping problems, this is a good one for you to try. Dopamine helps your brain communicate well. Interestingly, a underlying symptom of dopamine deficiency is restless legs. Restless leg syndrome. So if you have restless legs, you're commonly deficient in dopamine. Poor focus, poor motivation. Yeah, helps out a lot for you to try. Adrenal Calm helps out with stress resiliency. Catechostem, so the people that wake up exhausted in the morning, they need more. So this is going to be like your ADHD kind of person. The catechostem works great for that. It also helps to calm down your brain for anxiety. Now the most important thing, spiritual attacks. Your doctor's not going to talk about this. Your counselors probably won't talk about this, but I'm talking about this because I love you guys. And I want you to be well. God is good and the devil is real.
Yep. Yes.
Like it or not, it's the truth. And when you believe a lie from the devil, you're letting him control your lives. And he wants to come and kill and destroy, especially our children. So when nothing works for your mental health condition, Christians can have evil spirits that impact how they function. Are they in your body? Are they in your brain? Are they in your spirit? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But when nothing works, you have to consider this. Because it's a real life thing. And people die every single day because of this. Or if it's like everyone has depression and anxiety on both sides of our family, you have generational curse. Which sounds weird to us, especially in America, where like a curse, really? Like a voodoo doll? The rest of the world believes in curses. And they did hundreds of years ago. So if a spiritual bad person cursed your family for 1,000 generations and no one's broken that spiritual curse, it's still a thing because our words have so much power. The Bible tells us that over and over again, how much power our words have. We have the power of life and death in our tongue. So what you tell yourself is how you program your brain. And it's going to be good or bad. What you listen to is how you're going to act. What you feed yourself is going to be the chemical makeup of your body. All of these things make a big difference. Open Heaven Ministries, I don't know if you've heard of these people before, but they have a great deliverance ministries. They go to different churches. But sometimes people need to get delivered and set free from these spiritual oppressive things. And we can help you do that. So if anybody wants to stay and receive prayer tonight, we can pray for you. People here, people online. If this sounds right to you, because it is, it's the truth. So if you think we can help, give us a call. Go to our website. Schedule an appointment. You do not have to live with depression and anxiety anymore unless you're unwilling to change. Because what you've done to this point has gotten you where you're at now. So you have to draw a line in the sand and say, I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to sleep different. I'm going to eat different. I'm not going to let stress impact my joy. So if anybody wants a brain health assessment question on your way out, you can grab these on the way out. We're going to give these to you as patients. If you want to fill us out, take a picture, send it to us. I can kind of give you some basics, some strategies. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
What do you think of a continuous glucose monitor to find out what foods are doing, what your daily life?
So she asked about a continuous glucose monitor. If your blood sugar is all over the place, it's a really good idea. Sometimes you need to have a doctor's prescription to get one of those, but there's a website called Levels that you can just buy a continuous glucose monitor. I think they're about $200 or $300, and I think it gives you a month or two of information that you can just buy it and put on yourself. And some people's blood sugar is all over the place, just with like a spoonful of rice, their blood sugar's way up here. It's really hard to know what's going on when that's the case, so that is a good idea. Most people don't need it, but some people do. Some people it's very helpful for. Yeah.
Good knowledge.
It would be good to know too, yeah. I almost want to buy one like, okay, I'm gonna eat this, whatever. What does it do to my blood sugar? You know, is it way more than I realize? Because I have tremendous stress resiliency. I'm gonna fast for a week, and I just do. It doesn't bother me in the slightest bit. I can go without sleep. My body's awesome. Thank you, Jesus. Some people, if they don't nap, they're screwed for the day. So I mean, that's why we gotta figure out where you're at, figure out where you want to go, and how we're gonna get you there. Anybody else have any more questions?
How much?
Go ahead, Greg.
Oh, you mentioned fasting. What's your opinion on intermittent fasting?
It's good and bad.
Okay.
If your cortisol is really low in the morning, that would be a horrible idea. So your cortisol is your stress response hormone. So sometimes that's really low in the morning. You need to eat the second you wake up. And some people are fine and they can intermittent fast, or some people only eat one meal a day. So it's good for most people, but some people who don't have good stress resiliency, of course, it would not, because that adds extra stress to your body. Just like the keto diet is good for most people, or for some people, it's too much extra stress on their system, so they should not do that. And that's where my expertise comes in, to kind of help guide you on what you should eat, when you should eat, how you should eat.
So how
do you know if you get that in the morning when you get up?
We run tests to figure out if you have high cortisol in the morning. It's a saliva test. It tells us where you're at.
How much do genetics play on sleep? Because I heard your sleep gene that you get determines if you can handle, so like if you
It
need 8
depends.
hours or if you can handle like 5.
Depends how. Yes and no. Genes play a certain role with some people. If you're really healthy, your genetics doesn't really dictate a lot of your health. If you're unwell, your genes really dictate a lot of your health. Because think about a gene is a dial and stereo. If your dial's at 1, it's not doing anything at all. If that dial's up to 100, that gene's really crushing you. When you're healthy, you can keep these genes from really expressing themselves poorly.
Okay.
But if you're not healthy, they express and you really suffer from them. So it depends.
Okay.
So getting your body resilient to everything, your genes don't have a huge impact on something. Now some do. Some you can't control, which is what it is. But some of them are definitely like your housekeeping genes, like that would be one of the housekeeping genes, as I call them, that could be completely mitigated with your lifestyle. Yes.
You mentioned you were talking about EMF and how it bothers people differently.
Mhm.
How do you figure that out?
You would know. For example, I have patients that drive past the 5D towers and they explain to me like, I feel like I'm having like radiant heat from the sun hitting my body. Like they can feel it. And then we get past it and it goes away. Can you pick up your router? And does it hurt you?
Well, I'm just like looking for issues, like a child of mine who has anxiety, and I'm like, these things that you're like, could that cause her? You know what I mean? Like having them in the house or
So
whatever.
if you were to go away or somewhere where there is no Wi-Fi, how do they respond to that? Have them play in the room with the router. And if they're more agitated in there and they go across the house less agitated, that'd be a way. It's almost a do it to them and see what happens.
Okay.
And then if it's a problem, be aware of it and then fix that. Most people are not, or maybe that's not the right to say. Maybe most people are, they just don't know it. I don't know. It's so hard to measure. And then if they do, you can actually get even protective clothing you can wear. You can put things on your Wi-Fi routers to limit the exposure. You can turn your routers off at night because we're not using them at night, so just turn them off. You can buy routers that actually have on-off switches that you can program with your phone. Get a Christmas light timer thing, plug it into that.
Yeah.
Just because that just blasts out EMFs when you're sleeping. And if it's by you, that's bad. Turn your phones on airplane mode at night, so you're not producing radiation.
Do these things help?
Yeah, you can get little buttons, little stickers to put on there as well.
What is that?
I got it on my computer too.
It's a little sticker that has some sort of a metal frequency in here because EMF is scattered radiation, so it's harmful for biology. So it does this. These little devices, the stickers, they take this frequency and make it more like this, so it doesn't hurt our bodies.
Not on Amazon.
Yeah, there's someone has in. I actually have an EMF meter that if you want to borrow, you can if you're a patient. And you just go like, okay, what is this? That's a 1. Okay, good. What's my fridge? 5. Okay, don't hang out by the fridge. iPhone 85. Use speakerphone way over here. So you kind of know.
So wireless earbuds are very bad.
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are.
And if your kids use cell phones, have them put them on speakerphone because their skulls are thin, and the EMFs penetrate, the radiation from the phones penetrate more into their brain. I have a safe shield on my phone, which closes. So this has a lead. This is actually a lead line. So when I answer my phone, I close it like this, and it blocks all of this frequency from hitting my ear, my face.
And you can still hear and you
Where
still
is
get.
that?
It's called a safe shield. They're like $30. So I can hear out of the hole here
Talk
and talk out of the bottom. And it's a little wallet thing. So they're pretty
Can you
inexpensive.
drop it? Okay, too. Drop it. So that
The protector.
Oh yeah. This is the protector right here. and then have a blue light blocking screen protector on the phone itself to eliminate the blue light coming out of the phones. And that was the redundant levels.
Is that like something you stick on, like a sticker for the blue light?
Yeah, it's just a sticker you put on here. Yeah, just a screen protector.
And you mentioned her little phone has that metal, is that how those necklaces?
Same thing, how the medallions work, yeah.
Yeah.
The sticker is basically like the medallion. You can get jewelry and things, different accoutrements to put on your body to help protect your biology against EMFs too. And if you're sensitive to EMFs, those things are important. If you're not, how important are they? I don't know. That's up to you and your budget really. How deep do you want to go into all this stuff? Some people want to like go super deep, and some people, hey, I'm just gonna try to start exercising and see how I feel. So we're gonna help you with that, wherever you're at. Yes.
You know, you mentioned that medicine, the dopamine.
Mhm.
Now, will that help with Parkinson's?
Not late stage Parkinson's. Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not. You can get really strong muconopurines powder that can. It's pretty high doses of it. And it's pretty expensive too. But that, I really doubt it.
You doubt it?
Yeah, you have to take the whole bottle to maybe work.
That would never happen.
Yeah, it's
Getting to take one.
not. It would not